The narrative needs to be, there is something wrong with this person's brain or body or combination of the two that is causing dysfunction or dysregulation that can be fixed.
The brain only has so many ways of saying ouch. When it's inflamed, you don't feel it. People who are depressed have inflamed brains. Autism has inflamed brains. Alzheimer's an inflamed brain.
If you look at multimodal lifestyle intervention that included exercise, nutrition, vitamins, supplements, sleep modification, stress management, keeping the brain engaged, learning
social
something
connection.
new. Intensive lifestyle intervention. Of all the interventions that we tried, moved the needle the most.
More than any of these billion-dollar amyloid drug studies. Because coal was what they used to heat and do industry with, and that's full of mercury and lead.
And so we look in the brains of people with Parkinson's, they have high levels of heavy metal.
There's a big myth about Parkinson, and the myth is that it's just a brain disease.
Yeah.
It's a whole body disease,
Yeah.
Mark.
For decades, we thought about conditions like Alzheimer's disease, depression, Parkinson's disease as disorders of the brain. But what if that's only part of the story? Emerging science is revealing that many of the factors driving cognitive decline, mental illness, and neurodegenerative disease may begin far outside the brain itself. And our metabolism, our immune system, our gut microbiome, our hormones, and even the environment we're exposed to every single day. As part of our summer series, we're revisiting some of the most important conversations we have on the topic of brain health. In this special compilation episode, you'll hear from leading experts, Dr. Richard Isaacson, Dr. Chris Palmer, and Drs. Ray Dorsey and Michael Okun, as they explore the new science of brain health and what it means for preventing cognitive decline, supporting mental health, and protecting our brains as we age. Now, what I find most encouraging about this research is that it challenges the idea that brain decline is simply an inevitable part of aging. Instead, it suggests that many of the biggest drivers of brain health are things we can influence through choices we make and the environments we create, and the ways we care for our bodies long before symptoms ever appear. So let's dive in.
Let's talk about nutrition.
Yeah.
There's the Mind diet, which is Mediterranean. And, the way I think about it is, if food is medicine, what's the drug? What's the dose? What's the duration? Right? And I think, yes, the Mind diet, which is a sort of a modified Mediterranean diet, lots of omega-3 fats and anti-inflammatory foods, great. But there's different levels that you can push on the gas pedal to get more effect. I had a patient once who had MCI, mild cognitive impairment. She had a whole bunch of problems, the 21 things, and we fixed all. Her thyroid was off. She has heavy metals. She was pre-diabetic. She had methylation issues and high homocysteine. She had low omega-3 fats. I mean, just the list went on. And we fixed everything, and her cognitive function dramatically improved. And then after like 3 or 4 years, she started noticing a little bit of the dwindling. And I said, geez, why don't we try a ketogenic diet? Because I've been reading about ketogenic diets and changing the metabolism of the brain by cutting out all sugar and starch and carbohydrates pretty much and eating 75% fat. And we did it and like the lights came back on and I was like, holy cow. So again, how do you approach diet with all this?
Yeah, well, so nutrition and dietary patterns versus single or multiple nutrients. Like this is a long topic, and you and I both have written books about this, and we could talk about this probably for an hour. But to me, different diets, we're not in the realm yet where precision nutrition is like easy, off the shelf, straightforward. But different people, I believe, need to follow different dietary patterns. And I too, back in I think 2007, was the first time that I put someone on a ketogenic diet. And saw something that I just did not think was possible. But then I've had other people where I put on ketogenic diets and like things kind of went the wrong way. And to me, we're going to get there very soon where one day we'll have, whether it's a blood test or a genetic test or something, where we could put into a computer and the computer will spit out exactly what the person could eat. Until we get to that time, I think you think about the big buckets. So the Mediterranean style diet, fatty fish, brain healthy fats, omega-3 fatty acids, especially people with one or more copies of the ApoE4 gene, we have to have enough omega-3 brain healthy fats. Otherwise, people will have cognitive decline and the synapses.
Because a lot of your brain is made up of DHA, which is 60% as far as I remember, which is...
And DHA and EPA are the two most brain healthy fats, and DHA is especially important for people with one or more copies of the ApoE4 variant. So brain healthy fats, that's PUFAs, polyunsaturated fat. Then you have monounsaturated fats. Monounsaturated fats, like if you want to drink olive oil, like an ounce or two a day, and your doctor says okay, That's like anti-tau protein. Like that is good for.
But it's got to be good olive oil.
It's got to be quality.
It's got to be bitter and burn the back of your tongue. Otherwise, it doesn't have the polyphenols.
Exactly. And 60%, one study I read, of the alcohol of the olive oil out there is corrupt. Exactly. So, getting quality olive oil, like literally taking a shot of it, 1 or 2 shots a day, or pouring it on everything. I have olive oil stashed in different parts of the house, and just pour it on whatever I can get it in, because I need it. And if it burns the mouth, yep, that's exactly the proxy. Has a taste to it. So avocados, olive oil, fatty fish, brain healthy fats are like so critical. Green leafy vegetables. So berries. Half a cup of strawberries or blueberries 2 to 3 times a week. Nurses' Health study published over a decade ago showed you could delay cognitive decline just by eating berries on a regular basis by 2 years, just from one intervention.
That's why I gave you a berry shake this morning.
You did. It was good with goat milk whey, which was a first for me. Right. So I appreciate it, which is really nutritious and actually tasted really good. Green leafy vegetables, high antioxidants. People should be eating mostly plant-based. I
would call it plant-rich.
Yeah, plant-rich. Yeah, plant-rich. And, there's totally different.
Because plant-based is vegan.
Yeah,
that might be problematic for people who want to build muscle.
Mostly plant-rich. Okay, yeah, that's a better. And I wouldn't maybe I don't know the exact terminology, but and then like meat is all not created equal. Like red meat, grass-fed beef is totally different than other beef that isn't, whatever. So I think people need to eat, where they feel comfortable with, whether ethically or otherwise. They need to get protein levels, whether it's through whey protein, through goat, or whey protein through regular milk from cows. I think each person needs their own individual kind of thing, and some people may be more sensitive to one thing versus the other. And there's lots of different.
And I saw you putting like cocoa polyphenols in your coffee this morning.
I travel with dark cocoa powder, which is completely ridiculous, but I never leave home without my dark cocoa powder. I have coffee in the morning with dark cocoa powder, because to me, caffeinated coffee, I think, is brain healthy and has been shown to have better brain outcomes. Dark cocoa powder, again, it has to be like pure and not have the heavy metals in it and things like that. But dark cocoa powder can help with insulin regulation, blood pressure control, and has shown to be beneficial for brain health too.
So Richard Isaacson starts his morning with a mocha.
I do. A mocha for your memory in the morning.
And it's funny because mocha is actually one of the names for a test we use, the Multimodal cognitive assessment test. Which is actually something you can actually do at home. It's something you download on the internet, and it's a pretty good way of tracking your brain health.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't want people to do it too much at home, because then they practice and the doctors see the doctor and they memorize the test. But I don't disagree. Yeah, for sure. There are definitely ways to track.
So fatty foods, omega-3 fats, monosaturated fats, berries, leafy greens.
Yep. Nuts and seeds.
Antioxidants, nuts and seeds.
Balancing the omega-6 with omega-3s. There's so much nuance with nutrition, but I think that's it. Also, the ELF diet.
What's that?
Oh my!
Eating moss in the Arctic Circle.
I just saw Dr. Mark Hyman on a dietary pattern that he's never heard of. Wow, this is a great day. I'm never going to forget this day.
Never heard of it.
The ELF diet. Eat less food.
Oh, eat less food. Yeah. Like Michael Pollan, eat food. Not too much, mostly plants, right?
Yeah. So just less. Like people just eat so much in excess. Like it's crazy. And, there was a study out of Mayo that showed that people that ate I think the cutoff was like 2,100 calories a day, less than 2,100 or more, have, delayed cognitive decline. And again, this is like imprecise.
So the Okinawa principle, right? Eat Hari Hachibu, which is eat 8%
full. Exactly. Hari Hachibu. That's exactly it. So the take home here is, though, if you're trying to gain muscle, well, you better eat sufficient protein and calories, because you need both carbs and protein to build muscle, and you don't want to just starve yourself. And there's good carbs and bad carbs, and know the difference. That's really key.
So berries and leafy greens are carbs, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and some whole grains in moderation I think are okay, but not if a person's not active. So anyway, nutrition's tricky. Vitamins, we talked about, omega-3 fatty acids, but vitamin D, especially people with 1 or more copies of the ApoE4 variant, we check vitamin D. And just like you mentioned earlier, we don't just tell everyone to take vitamin D, but I think the statistic in Miami, as an example, 60% of the people in Miami, even with sun exposure, are deficient in vitamin D. So we check vitamin D. And
we have to be naked between 10 and 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon for 20 minutes. And if you're not going to get enough vitamin D. If you're a lifeguard, you will, but otherwise, forget it.
Exactly. People wear sunscreen now. People are indoors, and I usually tell people you need 15 minutes of 12 to 15 minutes between the hours of 11 and 1 to try to split the difference. I don't want to, it's hard to know for sure, but we check vitamin D and supplement if needed. We also talk a lot about B complex vitamins, and B complex vitamins, again, are not something that's one size fits everyone. The VitaCog study, which was published over a decade ago, showed that when people had a marker in their blood called homocysteine, if homocysteine is high, the people that took B complex vitamins, B12, folic acid, and a tiny little bit of B6, those people not only did they have slightly improved memory function on cognitive testing, but those people actually also had slower shrinkage of the memory of the total shrinkage of the total brain size. So
I think there was a paper published a number of years ago in JAMA or New England Journal I read where if your homocysteine was over 14, you're 50% more likely to get Alzheimer's or dementia. Yep. And that's, again, something we test at Function Health, and also methylmalonic acid, which is a marker of B12 function. Yep. And I remember a patient who came to me who was, a very successful businesswoman, was on multiple boards. She was in her early 80s, and she's like, I got diagnosed with MCI, mild cognitive impairment, early dementia. And she was pretty upset. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Let's see what we find. And she had extremely high homocysteine and high methylmalonic acid, which is a marker of B12, which are probably better than measuring folate and B12 in the blood.
Probably had a double MTHFR mutation.
And she did. She had the genetics that made her having trouble with her metabolic pathways. Yeah. And she was older and probably not absorbing B12, which is common. As you get older, you get less stomach acid and so on and so forth. There are people taking acid blockers. They don't get that made me crazy. I mean, there's the third most leading prescribed drugs after statins and psychiatric drugs is the acid blocking drugs, which are now over the counter, and they're dangerous to take long term. Fine short term, but long term. And so I said I found this, and I gave her B12 shots, and I gave her high dose of methylfolate and some B6, some of these methylating nutrients, and completely cured her MCI. Now, it's not that everybody with MCI or pre-dementia has that problem. It's just that she had that problem. And then a number of years later, probably 5 years later, I got a call from her, and I thought, oh, she's probably going downhill, and I'm a little worried about her. And I saw her on my schedule, and I'm like, what's going on? She says, well, I'm going for a trek in Bhutan. She's 85, and I want to know what I should be doing to prepare and take and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, great.
Amazing.
Yeah. What else supplements? What other supplements? Vitamin D, fish oil, the B vitamins.
Yeah, I mean, turmeric, I think, curcumin, the active ingredient in curry, I think in certain people, especially with elevated amyloid levels in the blood, we sometimes use this. And I think in terms of like the big picture, those are like the one size fits many ones. Yeah. But I mean, the list is really long. So, I mean, there's definitely other things people can do. But the take home here is, we check it in the blood, we do the history, and then we personalize the plan for them. So I think nutrition is really, nutrition and exercise are like critical levers. And in our research study that we presented data that I can talk about, because we presented this at the 2025 Alzheimer's Association International Conference in July 2025. And we showed that when you looked at, and I'll talk about different interventions in a moment, but if you look at multimodal lifestyle intervention that included exercise, nutrition, vitamins, supplements, sleep modification, stress management, keeping the brain engaged, learning
social
something
connection.
New. Yep. Seeing a doctor on a regular basis to make sure their blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar is all modified in an optimal range specifically for them. When you put all those together, but no drugs, if you look at the groupings of the categories of the people we followed.
So intensive lifestyle intervention
of all the interventions that we tried moved the needle the most.
More than any of these billion-dollar amyloid drug studies.
In our study that this hasn't been fully published, but I can talk about it because we presented an abstract form. There are people that, for example, took GLP-1 drugs. And GLP-1 drugs are tricky because, I believe that too high a dose, if you're not eating right and doing the right thing, you can, lose muscle and have all the things. Lower dose, I'm more of like the microdose crew when it comes to GLP-1s. GLP-1s, positive effect on biomarkers, in my opinion, based on our results, impressive results when used in the right person at the right dose for the right duration of time.
People ask me all the time what supplements I take personally. I'm constantly evaluating new research, new compounds, and new products. And the truth is there aren't many that make the cut. One that does is Timeline, powered by MitoPure. If you followed my work, you've heard me talk about mitochondrial health. Now, mitochondria are responsible for producing about 90% of the energy in your body. And when they're functioning well, you feel the difference. More vitality, better physical function, more of the energy you need to do the things you love. The challenge is that as we age, our ability to maintain healthy mitochondria naturally declines. That's why I take MitoPure daily. MitoPure contains urolithin A, a clinically studied postbiotic that supports mitophagy, which is your body's natural process for renewing mitochondria. Now, what I like most is that it targets one of the root mechanisms of aging rather than simply addressing the symptoms. It's backed by more than 18 years of research, multiple human clinical studies. It's one of the simplest additions I've made to support my long-term health. And now with Timeline's new lower pricing, it's never been easier to try. Go to timeline.com and use the code Hyman to get 20% off your order. One of the things I talk about constantly with patients is the idea that the body isn't broken. It's just not getting what it needs to do its job. That's really the whole promise of functional medicine. We're not playing whack-a-mole with symptoms. We're asking, what do the underlying systems need to actually function? And one of the tools I keep coming back to in my own routine is my sunlight and sauna. Infrared therapy is one of the most underrated recovery inputs out there. And I say input intentionally the same way I talk about sleep or nutrition. Not a luxury. It's a condition your body can use. What separates sunlight specifically is their Pulse IQ technology. It delivers red light plus near, mid, and far infrared wavelengths independently. So you're not just getting blended wavelengths plus heat, you're getting a targeted, personalized session. Now, if you're already dialed in on food and exercise, this is the piece most people are missing. Go to sunlight.com and use the code Hyman. You'll save up to $2,100 plus get free shipping.
Well, they improve metabolic health, and there's many roads to Rome to do that, right? If you radically improve your diet. I mean, before GLP-1s were on the market, I was reversing diabetes, getting people to lose 200 pounds, 100 pounds, 150 pounds. You can do it. It's just, and I think my guess is if they would do a head-to-head comparison of GLP-1s and the same diet that you would eat if you were on GLP-1s, there would be no difference in any of the biology. That's my feeling.
So while multimodal treatments, I would say work the best, the other categories that worked exceptionally well, meaning exceptionally well to me means statistically significant improvements in a variety of pathologic proteins that are associated with neurodegenerative disease. So
you're testing, not guessing.
We test everything.
Here, let me try these 20 things and let's cross our fingers and maybe do a sort of semi-subjective, objective test, which is a bunch of questions.
We try something.
You're actually looking at blood tests that show changes.
Try one thing, we repeat it. We don't try 10 things. For multimodal interventions, we try a group. And then if we're going to try a drug, we're going to recheck the 150 biomarker proteins. We check the proteins on different machines, in duplicates. Every blood test we do, we run twice. This is not normal. This is not cost effective. We do it anyway because we care about quality, not about anything else. But we just try to do things as rigorous as humanly possible. And what we show is that when we do these tests, we call these N of 1 studies, we'll try a GLP-1 and we'll check. We'll try hormone replacement therapy. Like hormone replacement therapy, bioidentical hormones for women during the perimenopause transition. In the right woman at the right dose, the women in our little hormone replacement therapy group, believe it or not, the age ranges from 42 to 67. We have multiple women that have actually started on hormone replacement therapy with approval and agreement by the GYN and the primary care doctor and our team. We've had, I'll just say what I feel like I should say, amazing success with using hormone replacement therapy. And when that rapid drop of estrogen comes in a genetically susceptible woman, we did this whole women's brain imaging study at Cornell and spent, millions and millions of dollars on this. Women that had, hormone replacement therapy on board had better brain volumes and less amyloid. But it had never really been proven in a study that you could use hormone replacement therapy. And then there's that women's health study that used like synthetic hormones and horse urine derived whatever. Like when you use a bioidentical patch and you use progesterone, and we talk to the GYN and we talk to the doctors, hormone replacement therapy during the perimenopause transition has helped improve brain biomarkers associated with Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative disease risk. It's been striking. So
this is more than just what has been done before, which is population-based studies, which can't really directly look at cause and effect. You're actually looking at blood biomarkers that change, that improve the blood biomarkers that are associated with neurodegenerative disease. Exactly. So that's a big deal. And the other thing I want to just say is that the consensus that I've heard is that it's important to start right away after your menopausal transition. But what I hear you saying is that you can actually start it later.
What end early? I want to start anytime.
Yeah, obviously, yes, start early.
Both.
Does that mean every woman should be on hormone replacement therapy? Like what are the implications here?
These are really, And by the way, why hasn't this been better studied? Why are we the only group, to my knowledge, like,
Because we have misogynistic research infrastructure.
it's just so, it's demoralizing. It's just so wrong that women are taught that, like, oh, you're having night sweats. Oh, you don't feel good. Oh, you're having brain fog. Oh, okay, sorry. We'll see you back in 6 months. Perimenopause is a neurological disease. Like, you're just going to have a woman suffer. These are symptoms that are treated. Oh, go change the temperature in your room and maybe you'll sweat less, or maybe change your sheets, get better sheets. Like, no, this is a medical condition. Like, really, or like, the cooling thing, like, okay, or a weighted, like, fine. Okay. Treat the problem. And what we've shown is that, through ridiculous amounts of time, effort, money spent, and research, which needs to be quadrupled or probably increased even much more than that, we've shown that when we use hormone replacement therapy in the right woman at the right dose, at the right duration, in collaboration with a multidisciplinary team, when we start seeing the estrogen drop, even if the symptoms are very mild, you get the estrogen back up, the tau starts coming down. Even though the tau wasn't elevated to a degree where we're like, uh-oh, sky is falling, but the tau is higher than it should be in that woman who's 47 years old. And this whole concept of, like, it's normal. Well, no, optimal is where we want a brain protein. Normal, a little borderline, a little high. Like, no. In order to have the most benefit, we need to make these incremental changes. And hormone replacement therapy during the perimenopause transition, to me, is one of the most impactful tools that we can use to reduce the risk of cognitive decline, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease in women. And I think, it's tricky. I think there's risks and benefits with every one of these decisions, but, I've just seen too many women suffer, and it's just not fair.
So if they're symptomatic, or if you do evaluations and you have a higher risk based on your Alzheimer's risk score, which you've developed, then maybe it's a good idea. But even if you're not symptomatic.
Well, I think if you're symptomatic, it's like how could you not? I think it's like, it's unethical not to try to figure out how to. In our cohort, we track estrogen, estradiol levels, and other hormone levels. Women 21 and above. We also, this is crazy, but this hasn't been done before to my knowledge. We do multiple blood draws through the menstrual cycle to try to figure out, like, as estrogen and progesterone change during the cycle, guess what? p-tau 217 changes, and these other markers change too. How has this never been done before? So we have women, thank you. I'm not going to say their code numbers in our research study. They get 6 blood draws on day 1, on day 3, on day 7. Like, we get 6 blood draws during the menstrual cycle. We're just trying to figure out, like, what should the p-tau be at what, depending on what day the blood was drawn, we need to correct for what the tau level should be based on where the estrogen and progesterone is. Like, these are things that just haven't been figured out yet. And these are the types of questions we're asking. And these are the types of things that need to be figured out. And when you take this approach, precision, personalized, individualized approach, we've seen women in their early 40s, like 42 is the earliest we've started, where we've seen the estrogen going down and we've seen the amyloid going up. Well, maybe they're a little symptomatic, but it's not really bothering them. But we're going to start on low-dose hormone replacement therapy if everyone is in agreement. And guess what? She feels better. Her cholesterol comes down. That's interesting. Her amyloid is improving, even though it wasn't abnormal. And this is really the key. Like, we have to personalize these therapies, and we have to, we also just monitor for a change. We've been monitoring these women for so long. We see the change, and then you intervene. And so to me, it's, if symptomatic, like, please talk to your doctor. And if your doctor says tough it out, like, go to another doctor. If you're pre-symptomatic, follow it closely. I think women perimenopause should probably get checked every 6 to 12 months for these brain biomarkers and hormones.
So essentially what you're saying is, if you're symptomatic, don't suffer.
Right.
And if you're not symptomatic and you have a lot of risk factors and some of these blood biomarkers that are emerging are abnormal, then it's better to get on early, even if you're not symptomatic.
I believe that specifically in people that are at women that are in the highest risk category, which are ApoE4 positive, especially women with 2 copies of the ApoE4 variant. Some of the most striking improvements, actually, one woman is actually lives in Austin. One woman is in California. I mean, I know these cases like, the back of my mind. Like, you just start and you see everything improve.
This is honestly, Richard, why we co-founded Function. And I don't mean to kind of oversell it here, but these tests are not things that your doctor likes to order or often will order. And for very low cost, we've dramatically reduced the cost. You can get all these biomarkers, including ApoE4 and some of these brain biomarkers. And then you can kind of start to decide what to do and take control of your own health.
The narrative needs to be, there is something wrong with this person's brain or body or combination of the two that is causing dysfunction or dysregulation that can be fixed. If we can ask the question, what might be causing the problem? And we can systematically look for causes.
So what do we know now about those causes? And what are the mechanisms that are going on that are causing this brain dysfunction? Because it's things like insulin resistance, inflammation, oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, all these fundamental concepts that are rooted in functional medicine thinking that we've been talking about for decades. It's happening in the brain. And we know what's causing it. And yet we're not treating it. So can you talk about what are those causes in a little bit more depth, and how do we start to begin to think about fixing those and even diagnosing them?
So the part of the field that I really want to embrace, which has been around for, 50, 60 years, is this concept of biopsychosocial, biological, psychological, and social. Those are the root causes, and we know it. So adverse childhood experiences, if they occur early enough in life, they increase risk for all of the mental disorders, and even autism spectrum. Mm-hmm. If an infant is severely neglected or abused, that infant is at much higher risk of developing autism because that infant will never learn appropriate social skills. But every label in DSM-5-TR is increased. You're at increased risk from adverse childhood experiences. What else do adverse childhood experiences increase risk for? Obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disorders, all sorts of other physical metabolic health conditions.
Yeah, anybody listening, you should go online and look up the ACE questionnaire, ACE, it's adverse childhood events, and get your score. And it'll tell you what your score is. And the higher your score, the more likely you are to have your health issues driven by what happened to you. Because what happens to you is not just a emotional thing. It actually gets written in your epigenome and written in your biology in a way that changes everything and drives inflammation. So when you have adverse events happening to you, it literally turns on different genes that drive different metabolic pathways that drive inflammation and oxidative stress and even things like insulin resistance. We know the biology of this.
And interestingly, can change your gut microbiome. So we just had a paper out, research study out in the last year, showing that amygdala activation, so this is your threat system in the brain, the amygdala actually activates a certain specific pathway in the vagus nerve, which then lands on something called Brunner's glands in your digestive tract that secrete an enzyme that changes the acidity of your gastrointestinal tract that within an hour changes your gut microbiome. And so stress and trauma impact your gut microbiome, which can then impact whole body health, mental health, all of it. But as you might know, what you eat also impacts your gut microbiome. And so we need to put it together. So even if stress or trauma is causing changes in your gut microbiome that then increase your risk for a disorder, we can use diet and nutrition to treat those changes in your gut microbiome to restore a healthier gut microbiome, which will then reduce your risk for disease or improve your health.
Bloating, gas, irregularity are often brushed off as minor issues, but they can really interfere with your quality of life. I see this all the time with patients who feel uncomfortable after meals, worried about digestion when they travel, or frustrated that nothing they've tried actually works. That's one reason I continue to recommend Seed. Their DSO1 Daily Symbiotic was designed differently from most probiotics in the market. Many probiotics don't survive digestion, but DSO1 uses a in-capsule delivery system designed to help the strains survive and reach your colon where they can actually do their job. It's a 24-strain probiotic and prebiotic clinically shown to improve regularity, reduce bloating, and alleviate gas. And what impressed me most is the level of scientific rigor behind the product, which is what led me to join Seed's clinical board. Go to seed.com/Hyman and use the code 25Hyman to get 25% off your first month. That's SEED.com/Hyman and use the code 25Hyman. Summer is supposed to be the season where we feel more energized. Travel and heat and schedule changes and longer days can actually throw off sleep, recovery, and stress levels pretty quickly. That's one reason I recommend magnesium to so many patients. It's involved in hundreds of biochemical reactions in the body, including regulating the nervous system, supporting muscle recovery, and helping your body transition into restful sleep. The challenge is that magnesium deficiency is incredibly common, and many supplements only contain one or two forms that aren't always well absorbed. And that's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. It contains 7 different forms of magnesium designed to support your brain, your muscles, your stress response, sleep quality, all in one formula. So go to bioptimizers.com/Hyman and use the code Hyman to save 15% off your order. Plus, get a free travel-sized bottle of their best-selling Masszymes digestive enzymes while the supplies last.
Just one note on that, because it's really important. It seems to me a final common pathway is anything that triggers inflammation, whether it's toxins, your diet, psychological stress, changes in your microbiome, allergens, infections, anything can drive changes that drive inflammation that ends up in your brain that causes mitochondrial dysfunction. And that becomes part of the root dysfunction in the brain that you fix with the changes that you do with diet and other therapies, right?
Yes, that's the way I think about it. So I
Like,
think
there's many roads to Rome and there's many things that can drive it, but the brain only has so many ways of saying ouch. And so when it's inflamed, you don't feel it. But when you look at the science, people who are depressed have inflamed brains. Autism has inflamed brains. Alzheimer's is an inflamed brain. All the psychiatric illnesses, their brains are literally inflamed, on fire, but we don't feel it except as psychiatric symptoms. And we think of it as something that is, like you said, genetic, or because of it's in our head, as opposed to it's in our body and there's something we can do to find the root cause and fix it.
I think about inflammation. I mean, the way that I think about it, it really is that there are a series of pathways that are all connected, like a series of dominoes that are connected. And so inflammation is one of those dominoes. It is not the only domino, because all of us get inflamed when we get a cold. And that includes brain inflammation. And yet most people don't become psychiatrically ill from a cold. Some do, but most don't. And on. COVID infection caused severe neuroinflammation.
I mean, I remember when I had COVID, I got severely depressed afterwards, and I could feel my brain, and I'm like, wow, I've never felt this before. And I felt suicidal. And I actually took exosomes and it was gone like literally in a day.
So the depression part is common. And a lot of people don't think about that, but researchers have been talking about this for decades. High levels of inflammation cause behavioral, motivational changes in most animals. So if you get the flu, you have a decrease in energy, you have a decrease in confidence, you are less likely to take risks. And what does that do? That drives you to want to go to your bedroom, get under the covers, and hide from the world and stay away from the world. You are less interested in reproduction, less interested in sex. Even if the opportunity is right there, you're like, get the hell away from me. Leave me alone. I'm sick. I don't feel well. Leave me alone. Let me recover. And in my mind, those are all adaptive responses. That your body is hardwired to have this response. And the response is conservation of energy, because your body is expending tremendous amounts of energy on your immune system right now. It is waging war on this thing that is infecting you and trying to take your life. It is waging war, and it is spending every ounce of energy possible to create new immune cells, antibodies, cytokines, other things that are all trying to defend your life. And it is telling you as an organism, do not spend an ounce of energy that is unnecessary. Get into bed. Go into that cave and hide from the world. Don't challenge anyone right now. Don't go out and get into a fight where you have to fight or flee. Don't do anything. Stay away. Hide from the world. The suicidality, so that part is actually really common with infections and high levels of inflammation. The suicidality part is not. And that's where I think about the brain becoming dysregulated from the neuroinflammation and people getting all of the constellation of symptoms.
Well, you talk about, the genetic vulnerabilities, but then there's a lot of inputs that can drive the same final common pathway of energy dysregulation in your brain cells, right? Diet, sugar, refined carbs, which affects everybody. I mean, 93% of Americans are metabolically healthy at some level. I would say most of those have some degree of insulin resistance, which we can now test for. And at Function Health, the company I started with a bunch of folks, we actually can measure insulin resistance, and we can see the degree. It's probably over 90% of people who we test have some degree of insulin resistance. It's pretty striking. Chronic stress and trauma, so psychological traumas can be transmuted into biological signals, sleep deprivation, substance use, toxins. We talk about microplastics in a minute. Not exercising and being sedentary drives inflammation, and anything like infections or allergens, microbiome changes. All those kind of lead to this final dysfunction, which you kind of think is at the root of it. And when you look at things like Alzheimer's or autism, which are not psychiatric, particularly diseases, the same phenomena is going on. Suzanne Go, who's been on the podcast, talks about mitochondrial dysfunction and autism and treating kids by treating their mitochondria and helping them with autism. And you're doing the same thing with mental illness. So can you talk about this kind of final common pathway of energy dysregulation and how it ties everything together? Because there's a lot of ways to roll on this, but the final dysfunction is very similar, and the therapies can be cross disease is very effective. So whether you have fibromyalgia, whether you have, alcohol use disorder or eating disorder, whether you have Alzheimer's, autism, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety, PTSD, these can be impacted by changing your diet.
The way that I think about it, because some people think, Chris Palmer, you're being too reductionistic. You're saying everything's mitochondrial dysfunction. And so I really, I'm struggling. How can I explain this so people understand what I'm really trying to say?
Yeah.
So what I'm really trying to say
We're on the edge of our seat.
is that biological, wide range of biological, whether it's infections or, hormones, or all sorts of things, gut microbiome, diet, biological, psychological, social, and environmental, in particular environmental toxins. All of those 4 buckets are the root causes of chronic disease. Those 4 buckets. So there are lots of things that go into those 4 buckets, but they all converge at this central pathway called metabolism, mitochondria. Mitochondria are regulating and controlling metabolism because they are really mitochondria.
Give us a 60-second, when you say metabolism, people, I have a slow metabolism. You're not talking about that.
I'm not talking about
Talk
that.
about what you mean by metabolism, because it's important for people to understand this.
So most people think of metabolism as burning calories, and yes, it is burning calories. Most people think of it as, it's metabolic syndrome. It's high blood pressure, high glucose, insulin resistance. That's metabolism. Yes, those things are tiny parts of metabolism. But metabolism, in fact, is a fundamental definition of a living organism. The ability to take food and turn it into energy or building blocks is a fundamental definition of a living organism. Viruses cannot do that independently, and so many biological authorities will say viruses are not independent living organisms. They are not a life form unto themselves. So life, a living organism, whether it's a bacterium to a human being and everything in between, has to be able to take food, oxygen, nutrients, and turn that into energy or building blocks to maintain life. And in fact, the absence of metabolism, the cessation of metabolism, is the definition of death. There are 0 exceptions. There is no cause of death that does not involve the cessation of metabolism. Suffocate somebody, you're depriving them of oxygen, which stops metabolism. Starvation, toxins. You will not find any toxin that can kill a human being that does not disrupt metabolism.
Cyanide, that's what it does. Boom, you're dead in seconds because it interrupts.
It is a mitochondrial toxin. Arsenic, a mitochondrial toxin. Tylenol overdose, mitochondrial toxin. Alcohol poisoning, mitochondrial toxin. You can go on and on. And the reason is it's not, when I first started doing this work, I was initially shocked by what I'm saying. And I was a little bit in disbelief. I'm like, it can't be that simple. It is that simple. And why is it that simple? Because metabolism is a fundamental law. We don't really have laws like they do in physics. They have laws. And this is a law of biology. Metabolism is fundamental to life. The absence of metabolism is the definition of death. Dysregulation of metabolism, this is what I am proposing. Dysregulation of metabolism leads to chronic disease.
Yeah.
Dysfunction of mitochondria broadly leads to chronic disease.
Ray, Michael, just sort of talking to me about, Parkinson's, what is it? Give us a little background on the biology of it, and then the increasing incidence of it, and what you think are the major reasons why we're seeing this dramatic increasing incidence. It's like orders of magnitude. It's not just like a 10 or 20% increase.
Parkinson's, the first major description of the disease was by Dr. James Parkinson in 1817 in London. So he's 61. He's a surgeon, actually, and he's actually even a geologist. And he sees something new on the streets of London, something so new that at 61, he bothers to write a case series. He basically writes his case series on 6 people, at least five of whom are men. They're all older, and they have tremor, which has long since been described, but they have this stoop posture, this hunched posture, and this tendency to walk faster and faster and to fall forward. And he said in 1817, this has not been described in the medical literature.
Really?
This is
1817.
So in 1817, Dr. Parkinson says that the disease that became known as Parkinson's has not been described in the medical literature. Ergo, I'm describing something new.
And this was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
And it's the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And where is it? It's in London.
Yeah.
And air quality in 1800 London is equivalent to what is in Delhi, India today. It's equivalent to what was over New York City with the Canadian wildfires. Remember 2 or 3 summers ago?
Yeah.
The skies turned orange. That was everyday 1800 London.
Yeah.
So I think Dr. Parkinson is describing the effects of chronic exposure to high levels of air pollution. And so Parkinson's, we think
And by the way, it was coal.
Coal.
Because coal was what they used to heat and do industry with, and that's full of mercury and lead.
One thing I've learned over the years is that healthy eating gets a lot easier when you have better options available before you're starving. Whether I'm traveling in between meetings or just getting a quick bite, Paleo Valley sticks are one of the snacks that I reach for most often. They're made with 100% grass-fed and finished beef, organic spices, and unlike most meat sticks, they're naturally fermented instead of relying on unnecessary additives or shortcut preservatives. And just as important, they actually taste good. They're tender, savory, and satisfying, so you're not choosing between convenience and quality. Have a better option ready when hunger hits. Go to paleovalley.com/Hyman to save 15% off your first order today. One of the biggest myths in health and wellness is that younger looking skin comes from what you put on your skin. The truth is that skin is often a reflection of what's happening inside your body. Chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, and poor hydration can all accelerate the visible signs of aging, no matter how many expensive products you use. And that's why me and my team recommend the Radiant Skin Duo from Peak. It combines 2 powerful tools for healthy aging. Sun Goddess Matcha provides antioxidant compounds that help combat oxidative stress while delivering calm, focused energy without the crash. And the BT Foundation is a beauty-focused electrolyte designed to support deep cellular hydration with ingredients like hyaluronic acid, ceramides, and trace minerals. What I love is that this approach addresses 2 of the biggest drivers of aging in the skin, inflammation and dehydration. Together, they help support brighter, healthier-looking skin while also supporting energy, metabolism, and overall wellness. It's a simple daily ritual that helps nourish your body from the inside out. To try the Radiant Skin Duo, visit peaklife.com/Hyman and receive 15% off. That's PIQUE life.com/Hyman.
Exactly. And so we look in the brains of people with Parkinson's, they have high levels of heavy metal. And so when you look at smog in LA, for example, you're seeing little pieces of dirt and soot that are suspended in the air. The fancy term is particulate matter. Most of them we cough out or sneeze out, but some are so small, less than 1/30th the width of our hair. They penetrate the nerve that hangs down, they're responsible for smell that hangs down in our nasal passages. And hitchhiking on those pieces of dirt and soot are toxic metals.
Wow. So it's a super highway from your nose to your brain.
Exactly. It's the front door to your brain.
Wow.
And it's the blood-brain barrier you remember from medical school, right? Doesn't let things in.
Well, kind of does.
Well, but it kind of does. But this
It's a little leaky.
But this is the front door. Doesn't go through the blood-brain barrier. It's just going through the olfactory nerve, the nerve responsible for smell that's hanging it. And it's hitchhiking are these metals, lead from gasoline, iron from brakes, platinum from catalytic converters. And so people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's both have high levels of metals in their brain. No one's really been able to explain why, but I think one of the reasons why is air pollution, which is one of the toxins that are inhaled that lead to Parkinson's.
Yeah, we're exposed to, we're exposed to mercury in the fish we eat. Lead is, in their food. And, if you eat a lot of kale, it's grown in urban environments, it just picks up all the lead. What you said was so interesting to me about the leaky brain, because when I was in sort of my early years of practicing, we were talking about a leaky gut, and I used to get laughed at all the time by traditional doctors because they're like, "Oh, that's nonsense. It's just, you're quack." And for a long time, I've also basically been saying that there's a leaky brain. Well, Michael, you sort of brought this to attention because I think people don't really understand what that is. Leaky gut is when the barrier breaks down and food and poop leak in and affect your immune system and then start to cause all kinds of havoc. And as you mentioned, Michael, that you basically have this barrier, this blood-brain barrier, but it becomes permeable, and then all of a sudden things get in from the outside. So it's not like completely impenetrable barrier. And I think we're seeing increasingly things that cause a leaky brain, like stress and many other things like toxins. So maybe you could talk a little bit about this leaky brain phenomenon, because it's really how the toxins get into the brain that are causing all these problems. When you do biopsies and you're finding toxins and heavy metals in the brains, like what's happening?
Yeah, and you're absolutely, spot on when you talk about leaky gut too. And it turns out the gut is also a pathway, where you can hitchhike in and potentially cause Parkinson as well. And we talk about now brain first Parkinson and gut first Parkinson. And so this leakiness, this permeability to stress and other factors that can get across is really important. So if you think about the brain as having like a force field, if you're a Star Wars fan, it's kind of got like a force field. And we've always kind of taught all the medical students, we've taught everybody in medicine that this is this impenetrable force field. Nothing's going to get through this force field. It's actually not correct. Not only is it not right, but as we develop, treatments and as we develop, different, therapies, we're actually able to defeat the blood-brain barrier is what we call it, or the BBB. We're able to defeat that. And it's so super important for us to remember that things can get through it. We can use that for therapeutics. We can also need to be thinking about that for cause and getting to the root cause of Parkinson. And one of the things
treatment.
And even treatment. But one other thing I just wanted to bring into the discussion, and I'm so glad that you mentioned the gut, is there's a big myth about Parkinson. And the myth is that it's just a brain disease.
Yeah.
It's a whole body disease, Mark. And we see it in the gut. We see the proteins in the gut. We see it in the skin. We see it in multiple systems. And so we
proteins that are expressed in the body in Parkinson.
Absolutely. And so
misfolded.
And misfolded. We have twice the risk of malignant skin cancer, melanoma and Parkinson disease, twice the risk of osteoporosis and Parkinson disease. This is a whole body disease. And as we think about it, and I love, kind of how you describe yourself as someone that thinks of everyone, thinks of the whole, we have to start thinking about Parkinson in a different way. It's not just a brain disease, and it's not just a disease of dopamine. There are certainly multiple circuits in the brain. And then, this barrier that we, have, invested so much in all of our textbooks, we've got to rewrite them.
If you love that last video, you're going to love the next one. Check it out here.